that I could not be more delighted to introduce our storyteller tonight. I've known Ann Glover for a few years, and I am always delighted to hear and watch her tell stories. She is unique in our storytelling community for a number of reasons. And her talent goes way beyond the magic that she does with strings. She has this energy when she's on stage that's hard to describe. She has this irresistible personality that comes through all of her work. She's confident, witty, engaging, and very funny. She is in high demand around the world as a storyteller. She's performed in Canada, the US, Ireland, Argentina, Chile, and Japan. She performs fluently in English and French. And I've heard rumors that the Department of Theoretical Physics at the University of British Columbia might be nominating her for an award to recognize her outstanding contributions to string theory. Above all, Ann is an amazing storyteller. Please help me welcome Ann Glover.
Thank you. Why is Barry? Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm trusting that I'm not muted. Is that correct? Looks like it's good. And I sent a little, I don't know, Barry, if it's possible for you to take me off as one of the co-hosts, because then I won't hear all the ding.
Yeah, who's that speaking?
Hello, this is Ann speaking.
Okay, yeah, I will get you off in just a second.
Okay, thank you. All right. So thank you to everybody who's come from, into this interesting realm that we're in, and to join us all tonight. I have to say that I'm in a 2-room apartment here. This is the room that is closer to the shipyard across the street. And they've got one of these big ferries out on dry dock right across the street from me, and they're sandblasting the hull. So it's been really noisy. So I was set up to do this Zoom in the other room, which is, I can do it in there as well. But then this week they started blasting the construction site next door. Happily, however, they all stopped work at 4:30 this afternoon. So we have quiet, peace and quiet. So I'm going to start off with a story, a traditional story, folktale from Burma. And it is about a tiger. Once long ago, there was a tiger who was king of the entire forest. Now, this was quite a big job. So the tiger sent out the word that he needed an assistant who would bear the title Minister of State. Quite dignified, lots of prestige, good benefits. 3 animals applied for the job right away. The first was a wild boar. The second was a chicken. And the third, a rabbit. The tiger, the king of the forest, lined up his candidates for this job of Minister of State. He looked them over and he said, I am looking for someone who knows how to say the right thing at the right time. The wild boar stepped forward. Majesty, it's me. I'm good at that. I'm the one you want. And the chicken came up. I'll do it, Majesty, take me. And the rabbit hopped forward. Majesty, you want me. The tiger just looked them over and said, we shall see who, if anyone, knows how to say the right thing at the right time. With these words, the tiger stepped up to the first candidate, the wild boar. The tiger opened his mouth wide and he breathed his hot, stinky tiger breath right in the boar's face. He said, how does my breath smell? Is it sweet? The boar staggered with the sense of it. Oh, Majesty, one thing I know, the right thing to say is always the truth. And I'll tell you the honest truth, your breath, it stinks so bad. It's the worst breath I ever smelled in my life. The tiger looked at the boar. You insult me with your honesty. I don't like that. So the tiger pounced on the boar. He ripped him limb from limb, and he devoured him. And then spit out the bones. Now this is easy to understand. This left the other two candidates a little perturbed about the application procedure for this posting, but there was no time for such thoughts. The tiger stepped up to the second candidate, the chicken. How does my breath smell? Is it sweet? Well, the tiger's breath had been really bad to start with. Now, on top of that, he'd eaten the wild boar. It was really bad. But the chicken had seen the way things went for the boar, and she was not going to make the same mistake. Oh, Majesty, your breath is lovely, beautiful, flowery, lovely. The tiger looked at the chicken. You're trying to flatter me. I do not tolerate such foul play. The tiger pounced on the chicken, and he ripped her wing from limb, took out all the feathers, and he devoured her. He spit out the bones. And now there was one candidate left. For the rabbit, it seemed as if time stood still. He saw the tiger approaching. He heard a sound overhead. And when he looked up, he actually thought, this might be the very last time that I see a bird fly by. And somehow he was taken back to a moment he remembered quite clearly in his childhood when he had said enthusiastically to his parents, Mom, Dad, when I'm a big grown-up rabbit, I'm gonna be a performing artist, a musician or an actor or storyteller or something cool like that. And his parents, in their wisdom, said, no, son, if you do that and say there's a pandemic, you'll lose all your work. You'll lose everything. And if you have a government job, you'll still have work. So be smart. And so he followed their advice. But now, looking into the mouth of the tiger, looking basically at his demise, he wished fervently that he'd followed his heart, because now he might be, where am I? He might be in Paris, in France, doing performances somewhere, if there isn't a pandemic, or even Egypt. Yes, he could be in Egypt, but instead, that rabbit is facing the tiger's question. How does my breath smell? Is it sweet? And the rabbit just said, And he smelled the spring scents in the forest, the pollen from the trees, the dust lifting in the breeze. Majesty, achoo! Oh, Majesty, I am afraid I have a cold. Seasonal allergies, apparently. Therefore, I am temporarily disabled with respect to my olfactory faculties. Perhaps I might be able to pronounce upon the condition of your breath at a later date, Majesty, if you don't mind waiting. Achoo. And the tiger looked at the rabbit and he said, You know how to say the right thing at the right time. And that, my friends, is how the rabbit got through this hair-raising experience and became the tiger's minister of state. The end. So that's a little tale from Burma. Now, I know there's one person in the audience who is only on the phone. I think your name is Susan. So Susan, you won't be seeing the things that are going on with string, but you might remember the game Cat's Cradle from childhood. And there's shapes that I make with my hands with the string. And this is an art that exists in cultures all around the world. And I've learned a lot of different string shapes, and I take them and sort of weave them in, as it were, into stories and have a lot of fun with it. So this next story is one, I've been looking forward to the chance to tell this one because it's a story that I don't get to tell very often. It's a bit longer, about 20 minutes. And it's got, well, you'll see there's a detail in it. I do a lot of work with young audiences. So when I'm in schools or something, this one isn't quite, I have to change some details. Not only that, but because it has a happily ever after aspect to it, which follows certain cultural norms that maybe aren't so politically correct anymore, everything gets called into question. But I know you are a mature audience and you can sort that out for yourself and take what you want and leave the rest. And so this is a tale from Iraq. And it's about a girl named Adila. Adila lives with her parents, her mother and her father, in a small flat-roofed house at the edge of the desert. And Adila basically has a happy childhood. They're not wealthy, they have what they need, and she has both parents until her mother dies. And when her mother dies, Adila is still a young girl, but her mother leaves behind to Adila her one most prized possession, her cow. So Adila takes to spending her time outdoors at the edge of the desert, in the little field there, in a patch where cotton grows. And she spends her time there feeding bits of cotton to her mother's cow. Now, over time, her father grows lonely and he remarries. Adila's stepmother has a daughter as well, same age as Adila. And the stepmother adores her own child, but is not quite so fond of Adila. Now, Adila, of course, consents this. So she takes to spending more and more time outdoors with her mother's cow. And that's where she discovers something. One day while she's out there, she's feeding these tufts of cotton to the cow and watching the cow, and she suddenly notices that there is a thin strand, finest thread of gold coming out of the cow's mouth as she chews the cotton. So Adila draws this fine, delicate gold thread, and she gets a whole bunch of it, and her mother had taught her to weave. So she takes this delicate thread and she weaves it into these small patches of fabric. Beautiful designs in them. So she makes these beautiful little pieces of fabric. And now she takes these to the market because with her stepmother in charge of things, Adila is not thriving at home. She's not getting as much food as her stepsister, and her clothes are thin and worn. So she goes to the market with these pieces of fabric and she exchanges them for a little more food and some clothing that she can pass off without drawing attention, but be a little more comfortable, a little warmer. So she's okay. And now one day while she's out in the field with the cow, she notices something happens. She's picking up the tufts of cotton, holding it in her hand, feeding it to the cow. But while she has the cotton tufts in her hand, a gust of wind comes up, lifts the cotton up in the air and carries it high through the air and way off to the other side. She follows, she runs after it, brings the cow with her. Those tufts of cotton land in a prickly bush at the edge near a stream. So Adila is there. She's just extracting these bits of cotton from the bush when she notices something's going on the other side of this bush. Adila peers through a little gap and she sees that there's a stream there, and in the curve of the stream on the ground in the dust, naked as the day she was born, is a hideous, disgusting old hag. She has a mass of stringy, stinky hair. Adila can smell it from where she is. And she's crouched down on the ground. She's grinding corn between two stones, and she's snarling and grimacing as she goes. And she's so ugly and she's so repulsive. She's got these long, long pendulous breasts. They're so long. She's flung them over her shoulders and they hang halfway down her back. And Adila stares at her. She's never dreamt of something so revolting, and yet she cannot resist. She walks quietly into the clearing, right up behind this old hag, and as fast as she can, she picks up the old hag's breast, suckles one sip of milk, drops the breast, and the hag spins around. You! If I had seen you before you'd sipped my milk, I would have eaten you alive. But now you've had my milk, you are like my own daughter. So sit down. Adila sat down. And the old hag, she laid down on the ground and she rested her head in Adila's lap. She said, look through my hair and pick out the lice and eat them. And watch the water in the stream. If the water runs black, don't wake me up. And if the water runs white, wake me up. The hag closed her eyes and she fell asleep. And Adila looked down, and the mass of hair in her lap was so horribly full of lice. They were everywhere. She reached down, she picked one up. She didn't want to eat it, but she had an idea, because there on the ground were spilled bits of cracked corn from the old lady's grinding. She picked up a little piece of corn. She ate that, tossed the bugs aside, and said, oh, And she took another one and another piece of corn. Delicious. And another. Eating the corn, throwing the lice aside. She looked up, the water in the stream was black, and she kept going, picking the lice, throwing them aside, eating those bits of corn. Mother, she said, these are so sweet. Thank you for letting me eat these. They're so sweet. And she looked up now and saw the water in the stream was white. Mother, wake up. The water is white. The old hag sat up. She glowered at her. Then you go stick your head in it. So Adila stood up. She went over to the edge of the stream. She laid down. She ducked her head into the water. And when she pulled her head out, her hair had turned to gold. It glistened in the sun with an unbelievable beauty. What have you done to me? Don't do this. I don't want this. I can't have this. My stepmother hates me already. She's going to be crueler than ever to me. I don't want this. The hag just said, don't you mind about your stepmother. She's nothing. She can't do anything to you. Just hide your hair. She won't know. Besides, the only thing she's going to do is kill your cow. My cow? That's the only thing I have from my mother. Stop your sniveling and listen to me. When she kills your cow, because she's going to kill your cow. When she kills your cow, just you mind you don't touch the meat. Understand? Don't eat it. But put the hide, the hooves, and the bones in a bag and bury them in the desert. When 40 days and nights have passed, you dig that up. Whatever you find there is yours to keep. Now that's enough. Get out. Go away. Go away. Adela scrambled back through the thorny bushes back to where her cow waited. And she took a rag that she had and she wrapped it round her head and she carefully tucked every beautiful gold strand out of sight. And then with a heavy heart, she led her cow back home because she knew what was coming next. And sure enough, her stepmother was watching from the house as Adela approached and said to Adela's father, your daughter, she spends far too much time with that cow. It's time to slaughter the cow today. And so it was done. The cow was slaughtered. And the next meal, where stew was served, Adela this time was offered a large bowl of stew. Eat, my dear, your mother's cow, eat. I'm not hungry. She refused to touch it. But she waited until the others were asleep and the house was quiet. And then, quietly, she took the hide, the hooves, the bones, and she put them in a sack. She crept out into the night and out to the edge of the desert. And there she found a spot that she'd be able to locate because it was near a small stream. She dug a hole, buried the bag, covered it well, and she came back home. And she began to count the days and nights that passed. But she hadn't gone very far when one day her stepmother saw one single hair poking out from under that rag. She ripped the rag off Adela's head, and the hair, the beautiful, glistening gold hair, tumbled down Adela's shoulders with an unbelievable beauty. Where did you get that hair? Tell me right now. So Adela told her. She told her the whole story. And the stepmother said, you take my daughter there. She's going to have hair just as nice as yours, even nicer. It's okay. I'm okay. I will. I don't mind. So Adela took her stepsister and they crossed through the fields. And they went to that prickly bush and she told her the whole story, all the details, the lice, the breast, the milk, the lice and the bits of corn, everything, the black and the white, the water. She told her everything. And then when they got there, the stepsister saw the old hag. And she said, oh, I don't think I can do it. But Adela said, you have to go. You have to go. Your mother will. She insists. So the girl stumbled out and stumbled into the clearing. And she stumbled up to the old hag. And she fumbled with the breast. And she sucked some milk out of the breast. And the hag turned around and said, if I had seen you before you sucked my milk, I would have eaten you alive. But now you're my own daughter, so sit down. And the girl sat down, impatient to get this ordeal over with. The hag laid down just as she had before. Pick the lice from my hair and eat them and watch the water in the stream. If the water runs black, don't wake me up. If the water runs white, then wake me up. And she went to sleep. And now this girl, the stepsister, she was just took one of the lice and she was so revolted all of a sudden by the whole thing. It just overwhelmed her. The thought of eating the louse and the smell of the feel of the, just being close to this hag, the whole thing unnerved her so much that she completely forgot about the corn. And she ate the louse instead. It was horrible. I can't stand it. Oh, it's horrible. Oh, I can't do this. Oh. And she ate another and another and another, and she couldn't stand it, and she squeaked and squawked the whole time so much that she couldn't hear Adela in the bushes shouting, practically shouting, the corn! You're supposed to eat the corn! But no, the stepsister was so far down the road of distress and revulsion, and she looked up and she saw the water in the stream was dark, 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 black as night. And she was so confused. Wake up, old lady, wake up, the water's black, wake up. And the hag sat up. Then you go put your head in it. So the girl stood up, ran to the edge of the stream. This ordeal was almost complete. Finally, she was going to have nice hair, beautiful blonde, gold hair. And she laid down, she put her head in the water. And when she stood up, she swayed because there was an unusual weight on the top of her head. And she did not have gold hair. She had two enormous black horns on the top of her head. She screamed, Adela screamed, and the two of them clung to each other and ran, sobbing, back across the fields, back to the home. The stepmother was beside herself with fury. She banished Adela from the home. You only come in here now to clean for us. That is all you can do. She fed her scraps. Adela lived the life of a slave. And to her credit, the stepsister tried to clarify. Adela tried, never you mind. That was it. Adela kept on counting the days and nights. And finally, when 40 days and nights had gone by, she went out into the desert. She found that stream. She found the spot. She dug and dug and dug in the sand, and she found the bag. She drew it with effort out from the earth. She opened it. She reached inside, and there she found not the cow's hide, but a beautiful robe that fit her perfectly. She slipped it on there in the moonlight. She could feel its beauty. As she reached in the bag and she found not the cow's bones, but jewelry, bracelets and necklaces and rings and earrings and beautiful, shining and glistening in the night light. And she reached into the bag again and found not the cow's hooves, but two shoes, wooden shoes, which fit her perfectly. And even they, made of wood, had a beauty that just shone in the moonlight. And Adela stood there feeling for the first time the joy of her beauty, of her becoming a woman. But she knew she could do nothing with these things. She could not take them back to her home. She had no life with these things. So she packed them back into the bag again. She buried the bag in the same spot, and she returned to her home, to her life out in the shed, where she worked like a slave for her stepmother. As time went on, she got the habit of going out to that spot every once in a while when she particularly needed a bit of a pick-me-up, or when she particularly missed her mother. And she would go out there and she would dig out those things and she would put on that finery again and admire all the pieces and feel the texture of the fabric and dance in the sun and feel the beauty of being alive and beautiful. And it was on one of those days when she was out there that she suddenly knew the way you always can tell someone was watching. She knew it. and she could not afford to be seen. She pulled everything off so fast and threw it in the bag, buried it again, just like lightning. And she ran off, disappeared. Now, sitting on his horse, the son of the Sultan, the prince, thought he had seen a mirage. A moment ago, there was this beautiful woman in beautiful clothes and finery, and she was dancing, and she was so beautiful. And then she was gone. And he said, how can that be? What did I dream? And then he saw something floating down the stream next to where he stood on his horse. And he got off the horse. He went to the stream and picked up a wooden shoe, which he took home to his mother. Fatima Khan, I'm going to marry the girl who fits this shoe. So Fatima Khan goes through the land, village to village, looking for an unwed girl who will fit this shoe. And when she was coming towards the stepmother's home, Adila's home, the stepmother took a huge hat and put it on top of her own daughter's head. And she took Adila into the kitchen and made her hide in the oven. It wasn't hot. She made her hide, crawl into the oven and hide there. Now, Adila could have done this when she was a child, but she was not a child anymore, and her feet stuck out through the opening. So Fatima Khan arrives with the shoe in hand. Madam, do you have any unwed young women in this home? Yes, my daughter. Try it on her. The shoe didn't fit, of course. Is there anyone else? No, try it on her other foot. But there came a voice from the other room. Fatima Khan, my feet are sticking out. Madam, are you sure there's no one else here? No, that's the cat. Try it on her other foot. My feet are sticking out. Fatima Khan was no fool. She pushed the stepmother aside. I must meet your cat, she said. She went into the kitchen. She saw Adila. She drew her out from the oven. She tried the shoe. It fit perfectly, of course. And she said to Adila, young lady, I have been sent to ask if you would come home with me, if you would like to come home with me and marry my son, the prince. And Adila said, I'll have to think about it. Yes. And so she did. She went home with Fatima Khan. She and the prince were wed. And they say that the wedding party went on for 40 days and 40 nights. And that if you step outside at night, you might still hear the echoes of all the music and all the singing that started them on their happy life together. So that's a story from Iraq, as I mentioned, and it comes from a collection of stories called the Cinderella Stories Around the World. So it's an interesting, very interesting collection. Now, Susan, you still there on your telephone and not seeing any string figures?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're there. That's great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about string right now. So that this is one of the things I started playing with string when I was in grade 4, and my good friend Betsy taught me how to make my very first string figure, which many people recognize. We called it Jacob's Ladder, or it's also called in Quebec Le Pont de Québec Bridge, so the Quebec Bridge. And this was where I started. It just took off from there. I became a bit of an addict of string work while I was a kid, and then dropped it for many, many years and picked it up again in my 20s. And when I started performing as a storyteller, I thought, gee, maybe I could weave those string figures into the show. And it was such a natural fit, very engaging, and people just get really fascinated by the string. So I have been doing it ever since. And now I have contracts where I'm hired as a storyteller, but mainly, will you be a storyteller and come teach our kids how to play with string, which is pretty cool too, because I also work on the literacy aspect and get kids making up their own stories with string. And it's forced me to develop an entirely different repertoire of string figures, not necessarily all the complicated ones, which I learned as a kid from books and so on, but also things like the one you saw a while ago, which is the postcard from Egypt. That's one of my favorite ones. And here's another nice, easy one that I like. Put just the string on your two baby fingers and your thumbs tucked from below, and you make a table. It's really simple. Oh, and this is a nice, simple one too. You take the string, you put your loop, take your loop like this, put your arm through, bring it behind you, other arm, and then you have a jacket. See, there goes your jacket. There's your jacket, and you zip it up. And then you can take it off, and there it is. So nice and simple, lots of fun. If you want to learn some of the string things, I have some YouTube videos, and there's things on my website, amglover.ca, and my YouTube channel, I don't know what it's called actually, but you can look for Ann Glover string figures, things like that. And if you can't find it, check in with my, you can contact me through my website and I can steer you to it. I put up lots of videos of how to do some of these simpler shapes and stuff. So now I want to talk a bit about this pandemic, this interesting period of time. The day that things shut down here anyway, I instantly lost $20,000 worth of work, just like that, boom, gone forever. And it was a really strange, surreal time, just very strange. But what happened in the end is that was 10 months ago. So for the first time in 30 years, because for 30 years I've been working as a storyteller, performing and touring all the time. So this is the first time in 30 years that I have been in one place for 10 months now and counting. And it completely changed everything. It was like I get to watch the weather develop, or the seasons change, minute by minute. I'm not going off to different parts of the world or to other time zones or anything like that. Very interesting. It took me 3 months before it occurred to me that I could unpack my toiletries kit from my travel stuff. It's just a real complete mind shift. And one of the things that I did is I took a course online with the St. John's storytelling people who many of you are familiar with, delightful group, and they did a course on recitations, which was a lot of fun. So I took a recitations class and I wrote my first recitation, first and my only so far. And I wanted to make it really simple for myself. So I took a structure that was already in place by another, I forgot his name and I don't have it in front of me, but a Newfoundland recitationist who has a particular recitation he wrote called When Summer Comes, which of course is a bit of a joke in Newfoundland because it never really comes. So I named mine, I took his structure and I named mine In COVID Times. And this is In COVID Times from the perspective of a touring artist. And this is one case where the piece I'm about to perform is way shorter than the introduction you just got. There we are. In COVID times. Restrictions cancel every tour in COVID times. At once, I'm feeling rather poor. With rent and food bills, my life could harden. But since there are no tours I star in, this year I can grow a garden in COVID times. Well, a little stretch between two maples, just enough to grow some staples in COVID times. And lo, my twining vines of peas, but in the west coast gale force breeze, they're whipped to little smithereens in COVID times. Well, with wind and slugs and rain and drought, in COVID times, so many crops I've now ruled out. But there is one that's still alive. In fact, it grows in overdrive, a thriving, sprawling mass of chive in COVID times. Now, you can come and visit post-COVID times, but you know chives will be in it. Salad, sandwich, soup, stew, yep, chives will be there through and through. But never mind, I'll be with you post-COVID times. There you go, recitation inspired by the Newfoundland Storytelling Group, St. John's. All right, so this brings us to the last story I'm going to tell tonight. And this is another folk tale, which is going to be illustrated with string figures. This is actually the very first story that I performed back at the beginning in late 80s when I started working, started getting up in front of people and telling stories. And this was the first one. I found it in a collection. I believe it's the Jane Yolen collection. It's an Anansi tale, a trickster story. I have since then realized, eventually came to realize that I really like trickster stories. And this was the first one. And I changed it, of course. You know, you tell it for 30 years, you know, things move around a little bit. So there's a few more little variations in there. So, Anansi. This is about, it's interesting, we started the show with a story about the tiger as the king. Well, this is a story with a queen. And in this case, it's a queen of this land where Anansi lives. And Anansi, for those who aren't aware, Anansi is part human and part spider. So he has qualities of both and then moves between two forms. So in the land where Anansi lives, the queen, who has extraordinary powers, she has a secret name, which it's a funny kind of secret because everybody knows it, but she says nobody's allowed to say it, that kind of secret. So she said, anyone who says my secret name will die instantly. And because she has those kinds of powers, everybody's careful. But Anansi is just inspired. He goes out in his garden and he takes a stone and brings it, puts it in the middle of his garden. He says, and he goes over there and he gets another stone, brings it in the middle of the garden. He says, deux. And he goes over here and he gets another stone. He brings it in the middle of the garden. He says, trois. And there's one over here and he brings it in the middle of the garden. He says, quatre. And he gets another one over here and he brings it in the garden. And he does not say cinq, because that is the queen's secret name. Cinq. So now Anansi has the setup. He just needs to watch and see who will be his first victim. At the back of his garden, there's a tall tree like that. And the tree is a perfect place for Anansi to watch, see who's coming down the road. So he goes to the bottom of the tree, and being a spider, he's good at this, of course. And he's going to climb the tree. So he's climbs. Here we go. There he goes. Climbs and climbs and climbs and climbs. Goes all the way up to the top of the tree. He goes out on a branch and he watches and he waits and he watches and he waits and he sees who's coming down the road. He sees who's going to be his victim. It's perfect. It's actually his friend. But you know, that doesn't stop Anansi from eating him for supper. His friend the turtle is out for a stroll, ambling down the road, shuffling along, and the turtle is coming along. There's his head. Wait a minute. There we go. There's the turtle. The turtle's coming along, and Nancy climbs down from the tree, goes over to the turtle, and says, "Oh, turtle, I'm so glad to see you. Why don't you come have a visit with me?" "Thank you, Anansi. That's very nice. I would like to." So the turtle follows Anansi into his garden. And Anansi says, "Turtle, look at my rock collection." "Very nice." "Turtle, can you do me a favor and just count them for me?" "Of course, Anansi." So the turtle begins to count. Un, deux, trois. Wait a minute. Anansi, That is a nasty, nasty trick. Goodbye. And the turtle walks away and vanishes into the forest. Darn, says Anansi. Didn't quite work, but almost. And he watches and hears someone else coming down the road. And this is his friend, the snake. And Anansi says, Snake, slithering along. Hey, snake, come on into my garden with me. Come have a visit with me. And the snake says, okay, and follows Anansi into the garden. And Anansi says, see my rocks? Yes, my stones. And Anansi says, could you count them for me? Certainly, says the snake. 1, 2, 3, 4. Such a nasty trick, Anansi. That's not nice at all. Goodbye. And the snake slithers away. Darn, says Anansi. I really need somebody who's not quite that clever. I need somebody who will, count all the, wait, just need to think who could be. And in the distance, Anansi hears a voice. Oh, that's my supper calling me. I know it is. That's my supper. Anansi goes out into the woods, follows the trail, and there's this chicken. She's right down there in the woods, and she's perfect. She just looks like it's gonna be perfect. Anansi says, chicken, my dear friend. The chicken is pecking away, poking under leaves and looking for bugs and grubs and things and slugs, things she likes to eat. And Anansi says, chicken, come have a visit with me. And the chicken looks up and says, me? Yeah, chicken, my good friend. Come on, let's go to my garden and have a visit. But Anansi, you've never spoken to me before. Oh, but you're still my good friend. I've just been waiting for today. Well, Anansi, I'm busy eating bugs and grubs and slugs and little things, so no thank you. No, turtle. I mean, chicken. Listen, chicken, I gotta tell you something. I'll come to my garden with me. I'll give you something to eat, okay? You just have to help me with one little thing, okay? Just come on, chicken. Come on, you can come with me. Come on. Anansi, everybody tells me never believe Anansi. Don't trust him because he's very selfish and greedy. But now you're going to give me something that's very kind of you. And now I see you are a very kind friend. All right, I'll go with you. So the chicken falls for it and she follows Anansi. And they go back to Anansi's garden. And Anansi says, chicken, see the rocks in my garden? Oh, Anansi, I can't eat those rocks. No, that's not what I'm going to give you. I'll give you something really good to eat. But first, I just need you to help me just count these rocks, okay? I'm not very good at numbers, Anansi. Oh, it's okay. You can do it. It's not too many. I'm sure you can do it. Could you just give it a try? Well, the chicken, she wanted to see really well. So what she did is she hopped up on top of one of those stones, and there she is up there, and she's looking all around, standing on one of the stones, and she goes, plus the one I'm standing on. And Anansi says, I mean, technically the answer was correct, but it's not what he wanted to hear. He says, chicken, count them again, okay? You're pretty close. Count them again. So the chicken's up on the rock, and she goes, she stays up on the rock. She says, plus the one I'm standing on. And Nancy says, chicken, come on. Now, I have to admit, Anansi's starting to get kind of frustrated because ever since he heard that chicken out in the woods, he just knows he's got a plan. He's going to take that chicken and he's going to take it home he's going to get her to say the queen's secret name first. So the chicken falls over dead. And then I have to move the camera so you can see what I'm doing here. And then Nancy's going to take the chicken home and he's going to dress her up. He's going to take out the feathers because he doesn't want to eat the feathers and all those little bits that you don't want. But you could still use them for something, of course. But that's not the main point. The point is going to get those feathers out and then leave the chicken out in a roasting pan and take that roasting pan and put like curry sauce on it, and look what it's going to be for supper. Oh, that's the chicken. That's what Anansi's waiting for. That's what he's going to eat for supper tonight. But first, the chicken has to say the queen's secret name. So Anansi says, chicken, count the stones again. Count them again. This time, get the right answer. Go all the way up. So the chicken up on the rock. Plus the one I'm standing on. Chicken. I can't believe it. Honestly, seriously, I know you're not known for being smart, but can you be that stupid? What is your problem? Nancy, whether I'm your friend or not, you should never talk to someone like that. Listen, I'm going to talk to you like that because you have no intelligence at all, and you're so stupid. If you think you're so smart, Anansi, you count them. And so Anansi said, I'll show you. I will show you. I'm way smarter than you are. It's so simple. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Anansi got the right answer, said the queen's secret name, and fell over dead. And now, here he was, a spider, lying on its back. You know how they end up with their legs sort of up in the air, and dead little spider. And the chicken remembered that Anansi had promised her something to eat. So she ate that spider up. And then she went back out to the woods. She carried on down the trail looking for bugs and slugs and grubs and things to eat. And as she walked along, she encountered her friend from the farm. It was the little dog, the puppy from the farm. And the dog and the chicken had a little visit. The chicken told the dog the whole story about Anansi and the stones and the counting. And the dog ran all the way here, told the story to me. Wow, okay. And I got on my computer with the help of Barry and Larry and Ava and all of the Seattle Storytelling Guild, and I told you. The end. Thank you. That brings me to the end of my program. I want to seriously thank everybody for coming out into this very interesting medium of, I often say on stage, I tell audiences when I'm on stage, it wouldn't be the, thanks for coming to the show, because it really wouldn't feel right just doing all these stuff in an empty room. Well, here we are doing it in an empty room, but having everybody out there in the ether connection really makes a big difference. So thanks.
Encore.
And thank you. Those were amazing stories. It's such a joy to listen to you and watch you do your work. And your
Thank you.
I'm just delighted that you joined us tonight. The fun, there'll be more fun in just a little bit. We are going to take a little break shortly. Let me just mention just a couple things. We do I'd like to remind you, we do have a tip jar on our website if you're so inclined. Much appreciate any donations. The party that we're going to have is going to start at 7, and you can use the very same link to get into the party that you used to get into this performance.